My first guest today is the superintendent in the South Umpqua School District in Oregon. I want to bring on today Miss Erica Barr. Erica, how are you today? Welcome to TEACHERCAST.
Oh my gosh, thanks so much. We are thrilled to be here today. Thank you.
I am so excited to have you on. Congratulations on the launch of the book. Tell us a little bit about your school district and what is school out there like these days in Oregon?
School is awesome out here in Oregon. The South Umpqua School District is a super sweet district in Southern Oregon. Has about 1,500 students and 5 schools, and we're doing really exciting and important work. So it's a great time to be in education for me right now in South Umpqua.
And you brought with you today your co-author of this amazing book. Why don't you introduce Tiffany?
Well, okay. This is my fabulous friend and colleague, Tiffany. We have been work besties for a really long time, and I'll let her explain a little bit about who she is.
Tiffany, welcome to the program. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having us on.
You are a school administrator, school principal in the elementary building. What is that like these days to be running an entire elementary building in 2025? Lots of stuff going on. What's going on in your school? What's going on in your district these days?
Well, this year I'm actually on a professional sabbatical. And so I'm working at a university here in Southern Oregon, and I'm working with pre-service teachers. This would have been my 14th year as a school administrator and my 10th year as an elementary principal, but I'm not doing that this year. I'm hanging out and supporting student teachers, doing lots of coaching and consulting for principals in districts around the nation, though. That part's been really fun.
What does the world of pre-service teachers look like these days?
You know, it is so heartening and so rewarding. It is just, I'm having an absolute incredible time. Very, very thoughtful students. They care deeply. They obviously really, really love kids, because I don't know lots of people that would go into education right now if they didn't. So they're just really looking to make a difference in the world. And it's been just so lovely to get to spend time with them.
I'm excited that you're both on the show today. Today, we're going to be talking all about communication, talking with your students. And, we mentioned earlier before the recording started, this is something that's very near and dear to me, both as a middle school teacher, both as an instructional coach, but also as a parent. Getting your students to be able to have meaningful conversations. Talk to us. And first of all, congratulations on the launch of the book. Let's just get that out of the way, right? Your brand new book is called Connecting Through Conversation, a playbook for talking with students. What was the genesis of the book? How did it get started? What is it all about?
So the genesis of the book, really, it came out of coming back to school after COVID. So things were a little bit different for those of you who remember what that time was like. And Tiffany and I spent all of our years as administrators, as colleagues in the same district. And we had always spent all of this time kind of problem solving and talking through what was going on. And much of that was around what we were coaching teachers on and how we were supporting the educators that we work with. And as we were coming back after COVID, we were really responding to what we were noticing as a lot of disconnection, a lot of student behaviors that were different and not what we had seen before, or just way more of the behaviors that we had seen before. And we were really trying to grapple with how can we make a shift here. And Tiffany was asked by someone that she works with to do a really quick PD for all of the educational assistants and teachers that she supports on, just those easy things that we watch you do with kids that make such a big difference, how you kind of position your body and the things that you say and how you get them to open up and tell you what's going on. And so she did that, and it was just a quick Zoom meeting. It didn't have a ton of planning. And she looks up and everyone is writing every single word she says down and then immediately putting it into practice. And we were chatting a little bit later. At that time, I was the assistant superintendent and she was the principal. And she was saying, she was telling me about the PD, and she's like, and this is really the book we need, how to talk to kids at school. And so I went back to my office, and as a supportive assistant superintendent, I went to go order her these books, right? I thought that's what she was asking me to do. So I'm on Google, I'm on Amazon, I'm looking all over and could not find it. And so I texted her, I'm like, Tiffany, who's the author? I can't find that book. And she like sends back all the laughing emojis. No, we are the author. And so that's really how it started and grew from there. Just this idea of how do we rebuild and build strong connections between our kids and our educators, and between educators and other educators. And then of course with the whole community. So that's where we went. And it's been a super fun journey.
Tiffany, what's your side of that story? You woke up one day, you're doing this thing. Next thing you know, you are planning a book project.
Well, Eric and I actually, we met in, it makes us both giggle when we call it principal school. We met in our administrator program together. And that was about 14 plus years ago. And we had this fantastic professor, and he really wanted us to spend lots of time having big, deep discussions and writing lots of papers and doing interviews and just getting to know folks in educational leadership. And it became really obvious to me really quickly that Erica was the smartest person in the room. So I made her be friends with me. So anytime
not true. I'm just going to interrupt quickly. I was definitely not the smartest person in the room. I don't think so. Tiffany was asking all these fantastic questions, and really what we found is that we had this very similar set of values around education, and really had a same idea about how we could support kids and really connect with them and in order to help them learn. And so we ended up connecting over a lot of projects. She's going to say because she thought I would, get her the best grade, but it was actually no.
It was not about the grade, but definitely, well, okay, all that is true. And I definitely was like, I'm working with her. Like, Erica, let's team up. Let's be partners. Anyway, so we wrote all these different papers together. And what we both have always loved writing, but what we realized, it was really fun to write together. So back then we said, hey, someday let's write a book together. Wouldn't that be fun? And it's always kind of been in the back of our minds. But the opportunity hadn't really presented itself, or we weren't necessarily sure what the topic would be. And so, after that staff meeting where it was really, really clear how needed that was, especially for, we had so many folks that were new to education that were coming in that really needed some of that support. And then also we were looking at new and different behaviors. And then I think kind of Erica said it a little bit, that not only, we've always had students that challenged us or that pushed us and helped us grow in certain ways. And there's always, a couple of those students. And it felt like coming back from COVID, that number just grew exponentially. And so we really had to work to be very, very intentional about how are we going to support students and support this behavior in ways that feel really connected for the students, but also that help us as educators feel like we're being effective and feel like we know what we're doing, and really help us find that joy in education. Because some of that, I have to be honest, like during COVID, some of that was lost. Were you teaching during COVID, Jeff?
I was. I was an instructional coach for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved to a school district to be a middle school teacher. And 6 months into that, I was told to go home and teach virtually. Mm-hmm. And so being new to the school district, being new to the kids, being new to all of that stuff. And then suddenly, boom, you're doing this. Right. And so, being able to get them to talk to you, I was fortunate enough that the way that I set up my classroom, the way I was already digital, I had my Google Sites, I had all these other wonderful things. It didn't make a difference. It actually made it easier for me to sit at home because everything I was doing was on the computer anyway. They had to be there because for me, it was actually less distracting for the kids because they had to focus on everything. But that's just how I teach. And even now that I'm back in middle school, everything is so immersive with what we're working on. It's different. But I agree with you. Having basic conversations, and I'd love to take a moment to kind of break down elementary conversations, middle conversations, and because they are different, right? You're the father of 11-year-old triplets here. Like I'm on that cusp. But having conversations, even where I am right now in middle school, some students can't handle having conversations with each other, with adults. The excuses, I'm pushing this other person, and then they look at me and go, "I didn't do it, JK." What does that mean? So let's break this down a little bit. And let's start at the high school level, right? Where most of the for conversations are happening, I think. What advice do you have for educators and for parents in having, and I would even say starting those meaningful conversations, like getting away from the curriculum, getting away from politics, getting away from the world, and just, hi, how are you? It's something I try to do at least once or twice a day with I pick out a random kid and, hey, are you doing okay? Are you feeling, how's everything?
Yeah.
How do you start and how do you approach those conversations? I would imagine relationship building is probably on the top. In your book, you mentioned this thing called listening.
Right? Crazy idea.
Weird thing, right? Oh, that's chapter 1. You have to listen to them. Okay, got it.
Right. And I mean, you nailed it. It is about relationship building, and there's so many different parts to that, right? And it does come down to, are we listening well? Are we building trusting relationships? Are we treating everyone with dignity? And, you asked about secondary students in particular. So I spent the majority of my administrative career working with high school students. I spent 1 happy year as an elementary principal, but the rest of the time I was with secondary, and I was a middle school teacher, and it was so much fun. So I most of my time is spent with those older kiddos. And I think the trick for me, especially with the older kiddos, is to really think about, how am I leveraging small talk in a way that is going to build connection and build rapport, so that we can have a lot of small stakes conversations that, are just really insignificant, just about getting to know each other. And so that when I do have to have those more challenging conversations, it's going to be so much easier. We've laid that foundation. So it can actually be a little bit trickier, I think, with the older kiddos to get them to just talk to you. With younger kids, you can be like, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite superhero? That doesn't work with a 17-year-old. And they weren't always super anxious to just chat with the principal. I think I'm pretty fun, but for whatever reason, that was challenging. So I had a bunch of question stem starters that I would use to just kind of get them talking to me, just random questions like, if you could change one thing at the school, what would it be? Or, if you could plan the most incredible school dance, what would your theme be? Just whatever it was. And we actually have a list of 25 or 30 questions for older kids, and then same for younger kids. That's a free resource on our website for folks who want that. But it's just helpful to have those in the back pocket. And what we talk about is just this idea that small talk isn't small. That's kind of that foundation of how we start to get to know our kids, how we can really help figure out who they are, start celebrating those things that are really special about them individually, and build that connection. And when we learn things about kids, when we find out that, they just got a new dog, or their grandma is ill, or whatever it is, and then we can bring that into conversation, a day later, 2 days later, it just helps them know that they're seen and they're heard and they're valued. And even another cool thing with that is when you see their parents at pickup or at the basketball game or whatever it is, if you can weave it into the conversation with their caregiver in that way, then they also know, oh my gosh, you really kind of know something about my kid. You care about my kid. You see, you're listening. So I think that small talk idea is really foundational to getting kids to talk. We can't start with, tell me your deepest, darkest emotion, or, I really need to understand why you did this big thing over here. So starting small.
I'm curious to see what the evolution of that was, going from being a classroom teacher to an administrator to an upper level administrator. Now you're the superintendent. How have you changed that approach on students that, you're the superintendent? Most of them are probably on their A game when you're next to them. How have you changed these communication strategies?
Yeah. Well, I think it's harder, right? When you're in a classroom, really intentional about starting with a connection, having those connection building activities just baked into how I ran my classroom. So it was just a part of how we did business. Small talk was ingrained in what we did. Once I moved into administration, I had to be more intentional. So in particular, when I was at the high school level, it was important for me to be really present. So it couldn't be unusual for students to see me in the hallway, for them to see me in the classroom, I'm hanging out in passing period. We had what was a giant quad. And when I was in those spaces, I wasn't like standing in the back and like surveying, right? I was engaging with kids. I was asking them questions. I was telling a joke, and I was just goofy. And I think with older kids, like you just kind of have to be, especially at middle school, like goofy is critical component to your personality when you're working with middle school kids. And so you just have to show a little bit of yourself. You have to show a real interest, and you have to be intentional, because it's harder to build into the routines, how you're going to build that small talk with kids. As superintendent, it's a lot of the same thing. So like I'm in classrooms consistently, and I'm not just hanging out. Like I'm checking in, I'm talking with kids, and it isn't hard with kindergartners in first grade. But as you get older, you have to just be a little bit like, who is this lady and why is she wanting me to talk to her? So yeah, it's just that persistence and being open yourself and telling stories about yourself, and then asking questions. I just ask a lot of questions.
Tiffany, let's go down to the lower grades here. I would imagine that you go into schools and try to have communication, and the kids just tell you what they ate for lunch and what things look like, and what happens at home. Elementary school kids can say everything under the sun sometimes. That's got to be fun.
Oh, it's the most fun job ever. Elementary is such a fun job. Yeah. But it is really similar just to what Erica was saying with the small talk pieces, because not all kids are super comfy having those kind of conversations. So I would say more kids are comfortable having those conversations. Like you can say things like, wow, your shoes light up. Does that make you run faster? And they're like, yes, it does. And let me tell you all of the reasons why, like it's so easy. And then there are some kids that you really have to work harder at trying to be able to build those relationships and build those connections with. And it sometimes seems that the kids who maybe you're going to need to have more interaction with and more intervention with, or they're going to need some more direction from you, or you might be having more behavioral conversations with them, those tend to be the kids who sometimes can be a little bit trickier to get to open up. So that makes it even more important that you build those, those connected relationships first, or, quickly, so that when you are going to have those more, behavioral kind of conversations, that you have a little bit of a relationship to lean upon.
I often find in middle school, building relationships all depends on the hour of the day. It depends on if it's a full moon. I find that sarcasm only happens depending on if they're with their friends or not.
Yeah.
How do you, Erica, approach the concept of going from the high school mind to the middle school mind? I think it's a fascinating year. Mm-hmm. I teach 6th grade through 8th grade. There's no bigger gap than those 2 years right there, I think.
No, I completely agree. So I was a special education teacher, and I got to stay with the same kids 6th through 8th grade, which was awesome. But it was like they would go home summer of 6th grade and they would come back different kids in 7th grade. Like something happens in those years, and it's really remarkable, and it's such a privilege to be a part of that and to watch that happen. I think what is so cool about middle school kids is that they're in this like incredible space where they can have really meaningful conversations and really phenomenal insights, and they're still kids. So they can also like be super goofy and say absolutely hysterical things. So you can move into those more meaningful conversations, and still they're willing to be goofy with you. They're willing to kind of be a little bit more vulnerable. They're willing to go there a little bit more. And I think it's such a critical and pivotal time, because the decisions that kiddos make in middle school are really setting the trajectory for what's going to occur for them as they move into high school and then post high school. They talk about that 6th grade year, 5th and 6th grade year really being a determining factor on whether or not a student is going to continue with school after high school. So I think it's so critical in their development that we have to pay extra special attention. I just found it such a joy because it's such an interesting point in development.
I want to bring up a word that's often found or found often on your website, I would say, and that's the term culture. You talk a lot about this idea about building a culture. It's not just about having a conversation with a kid. It's really starting from day one. This is how we're going to be. This is how we're going to respect each other. This is, I mean, I've unfortunately been binge watching a lot of videos of, Gen Z and Gen A and all the, those kinds of, hey, kids are this and that. But in my classroom, I'll tell you that I started off the first part of the year with just having conversations with them, getting to know them. Who are you? My first assignment in all three of my my grade levels was, who are you? Why are you amazing? What do you like about yourself? It's a lot of SEL stuff, because then we can start to have some conversations and common ground. And even when they're not in the room, I'm still seeing, oh, here's John. John likes this, 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 and this. On one hand, it's kind of a cheap assignment to start the year off, but now I can kind of go, oh, okay. When I see John next time, I can go, hey, how about those Red Sox? Exactly. And we can start. So I've started to build up little tricks here. What is the difference for you both between having conversations and creating a culture? And I'm really interested in hearing it from the principal point of view and then the, superintendent community leader point of view. What does that word community mean to you? I'll start with Tiffany.
So, really what we're trying to do is, what we know is that for kids to learn from us, they have to trust us. They absolutely have to trust us. So we have to work really hard to ensure that they do. And we need to be an adult that they feel comfortable learning from. In order for kids to learn, in order for anybody to learn, that is such a risky thing to do. And as adults, I think we kind of take for granted how hard it is for students to learn something new. Like if we think back to the last time we learned something new, and not just like a bit of information, but a new skill, that is unbelievably difficult. And we ask kids to do this every single day with 30 other sets of eyes staring at them, and so to take that big risk to learn, you have to be comfortable making a mistake. You have to be comfortable saying, I don't get it. You have to be comfortable saying, like, help me understand this, and just even asking a question. And that shifts, as kids are in elementary, as kids are in middle school, as kids are in high school, developmentally what they're comfortable with changes. And so to build that, like you're asking, that culture of connection, not only do we have to ensure that kids feel safe with us, but we have to ensure that kids feel safe with each other and with all the other kids in that classroom. And there's so many different strategies that we can use to do that. I love your example of asking kids about their favorites and doing those surveys. It's super, super helpful. And then you can use it again, just like you said later. When students are older, it's really helpful as well to do those conversations publicly so they have an opportunity to learn about each other. So it doesn't matter what grade I'm teaching. I've taught elementary, middle, high, university, and whatever grade I'm teaching, that's my favorite. But at every single grade or every single level, we're spending time doing daily check-ins where I'm just hearing about what's going on for you in your life, what's up, and really providing an opportunity, not just for them to check in with me, but for them to be able to check in with each other. We teach reading, writing, problem solving, critical thinking, all of our content area, but we also are teaching kids how to share space. We're also teaching kids how to be able to have dialogue with one another. We're teaching them how to engage in conversation where they're going to agree and they're also going to disagree. And how boring would it be if everybody, agreed on everything? But we have such an opportunity, and I will say also responsibility, to help our students develop these skills so they can be in conversation and community with one another in ways that are, expressing differences, opinions, and expressing different perspectives and actually disagreeing with one another. And we have this opportunity to model for them things that they are not necessarily seeing on a national stage.
Erica, you have the opportunity to change a community. When we're looking at bringing in a culture of discussion, a culture of respect, you're sitting at the top of principals who are sitting at the top of buildings, at the top of students. When you're having your leadership meetings, how do you start to move that culture? How do you promote this communication concept so that way principals get it, principals buy into it in a way that they then have to transfer that to their teaching staff? So that way, when you walk in, yeah, you're talking to a third grader or a ninth grader. How do you as a leader start to really build that culture? Because culture doesn't happen in a day or in a meeting. It happens over time.
That's right. It absolutely happens over time. It doesn't happen in a meeting. I think the primary tool that I'm using in particular to support the leadership team, the other administrators that I get to serve alongside in the district, is in that modeling. So if I've pulled them together for, a couple hours like I do every other week, I'm going to be starting that with a connection that is personal, that is getting them to talk, that is helping us get to know each other better. I started the year with a standard kind of get to know you survey, kind of similar to what you talked about. And we are playing at the start of every staff meeting a list of everybody's favorite song. When it's their birthday, they're getting a personal note from me with one of the snacks that they listed as a favorite snack on their favorite things, right? So it's gathering that information, using it, modeling that. It's also modeling how to disagree respectfully and how to treat each other with dignity at all times, because there's lots of opportunities to disagree in education, as it turns out. And so, I have an amazing group that I work with, and what I'm constantly reminding them is that that having differing viewpoints is what's going to make us better. So the point is not to agree. The point is to have dialogue until we can land on the best possible answer to move forward. And having those conversations, modeling that, and then helping support them. And this is what that's going to look like now in your staff room and being really clear, that you kind of have to do that metacognitive work. Like, I'm doing this is why I'm doing it. So it's kind of like we did this connection activity and everyone's like, oh yeah. But then it's like explaining this is why, and this is how we're going to use it. And then also having folks note the difference that it's made on the team. And I've only been in this district since July. This is my first year there. So I have this real opportunity to come in and kind of look at where we are in terms of our culture and then start building on that.
I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but teachers are busy.
I didn't know.
Usually when districts bring in initiatives, it's looked at as one more thing. So I want to ask the culture question a different way. How do you, now that, okay, you're in your first year, how do you envision year 2? How do you envision year 4? How do you build this into culture so that way it's not just in front of you in that leadership? It's in the classrooms. It's that respect. And is it in the back of your mind that ultimately that leads to less behavior issue? I mean, is there a full circle around all that? Like, what is the end goal for this particular topic for you?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. And so to be really clear, like, that's what I'm doing with my leadership team. I'm also meeting with teachers regularly. I'm doing professional development with leaders on this exact topic. And I'm walking classrooms with leaders and talking about the dialogue that they're going to have with that teacher to help support them and also building connection within the classroom. I think it has to happen on all levels of the organization, and it doesn't happen overnight. The most critical component, and Tiffany talked about this, is having trust. Trust. The community has to trust us. The teachers have to trust their principal. They have to trust me. Principals have to trust me. And trust is earned. That's not something that just comes overnight. So you have to be really intentional about taking those critical components of trust. You're modeling that, you're living that, you're walking that, and knowing that it's going to take time. So in year 1, I'm being really intentional in what I'm modeling and talking about the things that I'm doing and why I'm doing them. Being incredibly present, wanting to build relationships across the system. And we're talking a lot about in the school, but also with the community. A big part of that too, with trust, is the idea of safety, right? And are people safe emotionally, physically? Are the kids safe while they're at school? So putting a lot of attention on building that sense of safety and holding really high expectations around how we're going to treat each other and maintaining that emotional safety has been really critical. And I see it building over time. And so it's not something, again, that you can't shift a culture overnight, but you can hit a reset and start slowly building. And so that's where we are in the process in my district after, 7 months or 8 months. Yeah.
The book is called Connecting Through Conversation, a playbook for talking with students. And when we're looking at this, Tiffany, is this a book that you'd want to see people be reading cover to cover? Is this grab chapter 3 and take a look at it? What do you mean by playbook?
So all of what you just said, we actually, because, you said it. Teachers are busy people. We wrote this book for busy people. Eric and I wrote this book for all educators, and we believe that every single person that has the opportunity to talk with kids at school is an educator. And so we wrote the most practical book that we could. We tried to make it just, yes, you can absolutely read it cover to cover. We've been talking to a number of people lately who are like, it is such a quick read. And we're like, yes, that was the point. It is a conversational, quick read that you can read cover to cover, but also that you can go back to. Like, we just set up the table of contents so you can look and go, ooh, common student moves. Okay, I'm talking to this student right now. I'm going to go have this behavioral conversation. I don't think they're going to be honest. I'm going to do a quick little review of like, what am I supposed to do when they deny? Okay, I've got it. So you can kind of have it as a playbook, like it's a dog-eared kind of book that you've got notes written on the side and you're able to go back and look at it again. And you've talked about professional development as initiatives that make people roll their eyes, right? When I've personally gone to different conferences and been totally lit up by whatever the person was talking about at this conference. And I think sometimes, goodness, wouldn't this be amazing if every single person in our district could buy into this? And then I think, well, that's not happening. So what a bummer, that's a bummer. And what we've done with this book and with these ideas and these strategies are, yes, it is our absolute mission that every single kid in every single school feels this deep sense of belonging. They feel cared for, they feel loved. However, if everyone in your district isn't doing that, you can just do that in your classroom. Like, you don't need anybody else to be doing these strategies to make them work for you. So many people will see us at a conference, or we travel all over or at a workshop or something, and they'll email us later and they're like, hey, this was great. And I need you to know I went home and used it on my kid and it really worked. So I think, we just wanted it to be practical and helpful. Because, we can't, like you talked about the importance of culture. We can't just say to people, get better. Figure it out. Like, you need to build relationships with kids. So, get on that. We, as leaders, we have this real opportunity to set the tone, to set the culture, and to be able to say, here are the supports that are available for you to be able to get here. Let's look at this together. And so we tried to really create a resource for folks.
It really is trying to figure out where that bell curve is. We talk a lot on the program here about the innovation curve, and that, the 2% you're going to get, that next 13% is coming because of the 2%. And how do you start to reach that right side of the bell curve? It's not easy. And Erica's got a great plan for this. In year 1, we're focusing this, and we're going to focus and focus. And I see a lot of people trying this. My hand is raised, and you try to get to that 13% or that 28% before the 2% hit.
Yeah.
And even in my position right now, I have 445 kids throughout the year. You're not going to get to everybody. You're going to have a few kids that you know really well. You're going to have a few kids whose parents you're going to know really well. You have a few kids that are, and then you're going to have the kids that like, oh, that person was there. How do you get a chance to interact with all those? How do you build that culture? And you guys are absolutely right on this. It's time. Right? It's distance over time with everything. Now, teachers are looking to figure out, how do they get started with this? How can they get support? I know administrators might be listening to this going, how do we figure that out? Tiffany, what is the website that we can go to? And Erica, what are some of the resources we have? Tiffany, where do we want to go to learn more about this?
Well, come check out our website, www.connectingthroughconversation.com. There's all kinds of free downloads. Speaking of busy people, sorry, I got really excited. Speaking of busy people, like I said, we do all kinds of professional development, and folks, especially leaders, will say things like, gosh, this is great. I'd love to share this with all the folks in my building or the paraprofessionals. I just do not have time to be able to do PD. Do you have videos? And so we finally did that. So we launched on Valentine's Day our new online course. And it's about 2 total hours of video, but they're broken up into 5 to 10-ish minute lessons that people can listen to and watch. There's some discussion questions that can go along with it. And we have a special gift for your listeners. If they'd like to buy one license and have $50 off, they can type in CTC podcast and they'll get a $50 discount code. If folks want more than one license, they should reach out. We've got all kinds of specials for bulk licensing.
And we are going to make sure that we have links to everything over on our show notes. Again, this is Digital Learning Today podcast, episode number 63. And Erica, when somebody comes to the website, what do you want them to experience? What do you want them to walk away with? What is the experience looking like for you?
Yeah, so the website is really meant to be a guide. So it has all of the resources that Tiffany talked about. One of my favorite ones is the study guide that goes along with the book, which is just a free download. So if you're reading the book on your own, or hopefully reading the book as a book study with the staff or with colleagues, you can use those questions to kind of help guide you through. We actually have a book study special going on right now too. You can find that on our website as well. And then we have a number of ways that we engage with schools and districts and individuals for support. And so those are all described on our website as well.
Connectingthroughconversation.com. And look, this topic of building a curriculum around conversation, getting into your students through conversation, treating them as humans, around, having all of these things. It's not easy. It takes time. It takes practice. It does take a little bit of having a conversation just like this. And even just talking to you, I'm getting more ideas about how I want to finish off the year, because even though my kids are leaving me soon, I'm probably going to have them again next year and 1 year older.
Right.
And how do I then start those conversations? How do I build on those conversations? So I hope you guys have a chance to check out the website, Connecting Through Conversation. Again, all the links are going to be over on our website, Digital Learning Today podcast, episode 63. Erica and Tiffany, thank you guys so much. Tiffany, where can we learn about you and your great things, and how do we connect with you online?
The website is a great place, but also you can reach us at hello@connectingthroughconversation.com is a great way to just email us and reach out. And on our website, I think that is a very silly picture of us, Erica, on our About Us page. But there's all kinds of information there. And then I love just connecting with folks so they can reach out via email, and we're on all the socials. We're on all the things.
Erica, as we look into the summertime, what advice do you have for anybody who's looking to either get into these conversations, learn more, or even as a new superintendent? What advice would you have to other top-level district executives?
Oh gosh. Well, first, rest and recharge as much as you can over the summer. That is my summer advice. Also, it is because you're in that space of reflection. Identify those areas that you really want to work on and focus on, and then build resources around that. So really hope one of those things will be our book, the resources that we have. We are also doing a lot of work right now on how to talk to grownups at school. So that's another thing that I would love to connect to folks on, especially those folks thinking about administration, or for sure the superintendency. We get to talk to lots of grownups. And so that work is really fun. But my advice is to really, first of all, rest and reflect and think about what are the things that I really want to grow in as I'm coming into next year. And I would love to support folks in that. And really, I want to just put a highlight. Do follow us on the socials. We share a ton of information that way. We're on all the platforms, and we have quick videos. We share resources that way. We have a blog which I should have shared also on the website. That is another great source of information if you want to learn more about any of these topics.
Well, and over the summer, aren't you always looking for a beach read? Like, I'm always looking for a beach read.
Yes,
this is a fast, quick, beachy read.
Yep.
We're going to make sure, again, we have links to everything, all their socials, all the books, and how you guys can get a discount on their online courses over on our site, Digital Learning Today podcast, episode number 63. Tiffany, Erica, thank you guys so much. Let's do this again over the summertime. We can talk about having communications with adults. We can talk about how to continue that culture into year 2. Would love to have you guys back on the show to continue this conversation.
We would love that. Thank you. Thanks, Jeff.
And if you guys would like to join us for that show, please feel free to reach out. You can head on over to teachercast.net/contact. Leave us a mail. Let us know what you're thinking. Suggest a topic for a future podcast. We are looking forward to helping you guys as we go throughout the end of the school year and into the next school year. And that wraps up this episode of Digital Learning Today, episode number 63. Thank you guys for checking us out today. And on behalf of everybody here on TeacherCast, my name is Jeff Bradbury, reminding you guys to keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.